Hello, everyone. I am Deb Sherr, Artistic Director of Avaloch Farm Music Institute, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome you to Made at Avaloch, our new series created to celebrate the variety and excellence of the work Avaloch has supported. Each event will highlight one or two projects and will include discussions with musicians about process, as well as recorded performances of completed work. So far, Avaloch has hosted over 1,000 musicians in hundreds of groups and including dozens of composers. We hope you enjoy the diversity and depth of the genre and approaches to the creative process which will be presented here. Before we begin, however, I would like to thank a few people. First, our administrative team, Mason Donovan and Jenna Hall. Second, our musical team, Hannah Collins, Mike Compitello, Catherine Dowling, who joined me in creating these events. And last but certainly not least, Fred Tauber, without whose generosity the vision and inspiration of Avaloch would never have come to be. So thank you for joining us for this ongoing celebration of creative work made at Avaloch. Hello, everybody. Very excited to have you with us on this Made at Avaloch event, where we're featuring the Aizuri String Quartet, as well as composers Lembit Beecher and Paul Wiancko. So hello to all of you, violinist Miho Saegusa and Emma Frucht, and violist Ayane Kozasa, and cellist Karen Ouzounian. Hi, Lembit and Paul as well. Good to see you. It's really great to see you. And I just want to mention one thing. Emma, you're new to this ensemble. When did you join?
I joined a little over a year ago. We celebrated our anniversary a couple weeks ago.
Oh boy, that's exciting.
We called it the Emmaversary.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, it's wonderful that you all found each other. So let's start this evening with Lembit's piece, which is Sophia's Wide Awake Dreams. And perhaps, Lembit, you can get us started by talking about the piece for us.
Sure. It's so great to be here with you, Deb, and it's Avaloch is such a special place. So this piece is really has a deep connection to Avaloch. It's actually two movements from a chamber opera called Sophia's Forest that I began writing, I think I started thinking about it 2015 or 2016. And it was written for the Aizuri Quartet and for 4 singers and a child actress. But the other sort of part of the opera was this 9-piece sound sculpture, which I built along with the Excite Center at Drexel University, this sort of amazing place that combines artistic activity with engineering and people who build things. Lots of amazing things come out of there. So they helped me build the sound sculpture, which functions in the opera both as a character and as a sort of musical instrument. And the Aizuris helped me sort of workshop this a number of times throughout the process of the piece, of the development of the whole opera. And out of it emerged these 2 instrumental movements, which became sort of a piece of their own, this suite that I call Sophia's Wide Awake Dreams.
Yeah, that sound sculpture there is quite extraordinary. Was it your concept, the various moving parts and sounding parts? Was it all your idea?
I had an additional idea. I remember writing my friend Hannah Moskovich, who was the librettist for this project, and saying, I just think about a sound sculpture that's a friend to this little girl, but also is sort of dangerous, and it helps her when she comes to America, and please write this. And then I mean, the amazing thing about writing opera and this sort of collaborative work is that there's input from all sources. So Hannah started writing this libretto for the opera, and then I started working with Young Moo Kim, who runs the Excite Center at Drexel, and he brought in various teams of students who all had different ideas, and we were able to bounce ideas back and forth. And in the end, the sound sculpture became sort of generate sound in two ways, through a series of wine glass towers, and then through a series of bike wheels. The wine glass towers have 4 wine glasses on each of them that have little, I don't know what you call them, like little fingers, basically. So I can set the whole tower spinning and control the speed of that, but then each finger I can trigger independently, and it'll touch the wine glass and create a pitch. In some cases, a little more of a squeak, sometimes a really beautiful, pure pitch. And then the bike wheels have a spinning bike wheel, and then a little, I guess you call it another little finger that, or basically a wooden dowel that sticks into the bike wheel that creates whirring of different speeds, and in fact, at slower speeds, different types of rhythms. It's one thing that I really loved about working on the project, and was really grateful for the Aizuris to join me in this world, is that there's a very technical side to this, a side of programming and of, to some extent, I have a lot of control over the sound sculpture, and I can set up, pre-program these different patterns of sounds that it creates. But there's also a very, I guess you call it mechanical side of everyday life, so that if I put a finger down onto the wine glass, I'm not always 100% sure what the result will be. And it's sort of it's a bit like learning an instrument, that you have to develop a certain subtle control over it. But there's also a certain wishy-washiness with what comes out, and figuring out how that imprecision fit with relatively precise writing for the strings, I think was part of the challenge and the enjoyment of this piece.
Yeah, it creates an amazing atmosphere. There's no doubt about it. The sound of the wine glasses reminds me of glass harmonica, that old-fashioned instrument, yeah, back in Mozart's time, actually. It's quite an amazing sound.
Very much the same technology.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the glass harmonica was used so often in opera to represent these very special or magical worlds, and it's in this case it's somewhat the same. And in these pieces, I'm trying to evoke the imaginary world of this 9-year-old girl who's recently immigrated to the United States, and try to think about what imagination provides for people, and especially for children in times of stress and trauma.
Boy, really apt to the times, I guess. Also, so anybody from the quartet want to chime in here, so to speak, about what it was like to learn this piece and work with Lembit and work with this 5th instrument as well. Miho, you want to start us off?
Sure. I remember when we were first workshopping it, and we came into the room and we had no idea what to expect, and we saw like the bike wheel and the wine glasses, and we were at the time kind of playing around with like what kinds of sounds or what kind of techniques could we use that would have our sounds be kind of in the same fabric as the sculptures. Like, for example, the bike wheels, to kind of get that percussive element, the maybe, the sort of precise but can be like seemingly improvisatory, those kinds of sounds. We were just playing around and like trying this and trying that, and also with the wine glasses, I think we were trying lots of different kinds of harmonic techniques, and like Karen has like some beautiful seagull kinds of harmonics, and yeah, like how to kind of be another layer of the sculpture sound, but also kind of, yeah, like coming in and out of that world. Sometimes we want to be distinct from it, and then sometimes we really want it to be kind of one with that 5th person. person.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else want to say anything about that experience, Karen?
Sure. I remember seeing a page of cello writing initially that was really high and really microtonal to match the wine glasses. And I initially was like freaking out. But it was cool. But also that microtonal writing was really beautiful to explore for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ayane, anything else to add to this?
My favorite part about the whole process of this video that we're about to see also was that during the recording process of it, we had to have a designated waterer for the wine glasses. So there was like an extra helping hand, an extra person in the recording studio whose sole purpose was to make sure that all the droplets of water were being like well, not hydrated, but there was enough water in the machines to make sure that all the machines were working properly. And so like there was this like, you know, this high tech process to it, but also there's this extremely human part of it that like our friend had to just go around and just water all of these things. And that was like really charming too. And that it was like such a neat hybrid of that technology and the fascination of technology and the human like quality that Lembit mixed together. Yeah, that really made this piece so beautiful.
Great description of it. Yeah, it's certainly has an extraordinary quality to it. There's no doubt about it, and doesn't feel like it's high tech when you're listening to it, because somehow the sounds are old. It's really very interesting. Did you actually, as a quartet, play it for the performance of the opera? Was it part of the opera itself? You did. So,
it was, though the opera was premiered, I guess, in the fall of, or September of 2017. And then I sort of rewrote these two movements for the Aizuri Quartet's album, Blueprinting.
right.
And that was recorded, I guess, in January of 2018. So they got actually quite a bit after the process of writing the opera, and these movements themselves actually got revised quite a lot. And it was, Ayane said, I love the humanness of the sounds, but sometimes the idiosyncrasies were frustrating to work with and required quite a lot of little bits of maintenance. So I think it took me a little while to really discover what the sculptures could do, what they were naturally suited for, and what sort of sounds, and especially rhythmically, what I could expect, and what I could leave to chance, and what I really shouldn't, like the type of rhythmic specificity that I really shouldn't expect from it.
So you had to learn that instrument really, like anybody else. You had to, and you're doing it from a board, right? Is that how you're? You look like you're very involved in that video with working the sculpture.
Yeah, there's two types of control. There's I have sort of pre-programmed patterns in through Ableton Live that I can hit a button and then it'll go for a certain period of time. But then I can also control every specific note and gesture. So where it's possible, the pre-programming helps make life simpler for me. But there are certainly lots of cases where I needed a more specific type of control to react to directly to what the quartet was doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure everybody is dying to hear and see this piece performed. So let's take a look at the video we have of it. And Lembit, would you like to introduce it, the first movement?
Sure. This is the first movement of Sophia's Wide Awake Dreams. It's just called Dream Number 1. And in the opera, it occurs at a moment when this young girl, Sophia, has just come to the United States. She has a little music box that her father had given her, and he didn't make the journey to the United States. He was lost at some point. We're not exactly sure when. And so I sort of imagined it as the musical box kind of coming alive in Sophia's mind and starting its transformation into a character or a friend for Sophia.
Okay, great. Well, let's listen and watch. Well, that was fantastic to experience that piece, to see all the technical things involved and hear the gorgeous playing and wonderful sounds, amazing sort of lyrical and evanescent sounds that you create. Tell us about the second movement.
Sure. Actually, maybe one thing I mentioned about the first movement that I forgot to before is that the music box that you saw in the video is one that I had custom made. Actually, I think originally it played Merry Wives of Windsor or something, or not. I mean, Merry Widow tunes or something like that, Lehar. And I had it sort of this someone I think in northern Vermont, who was a music box maker, sort of was able to take all of that mechanism out and then replace it with a little melody that I wrote. And I love having that little concrete thing that's part of the piece and part of the opera as well. The second movement is from quite a bit later in the opera, but it's another moment of young Sophia sort of shrinking away from the world and shrinking away from of what's going on in her mother's life and going on around her, and sort of returning to this friend who she started to cultivate, this imaginary music box creature. It's perhaps a bit more dramatic than the first movement. And you hear this sort of, at the end of it, this gentle kind of distant singing, which is sort of an echo of sort of her memory of her sister, who through the opera you learn also didn't make it.
Wow. When I first watched the video, I wondered if the quartet was actually humming away. The voice came through.
They were, yeah, and actually that was.
I wasn't sure where it was coming from. Okay.
Yeah, in the opera there's a separate character who sings. Sorry, go ahead, Miho.
Oh no, that was like a really tricky thing for us to like practice and coordinate, to play and hum at the same time.
Yeah, it's not easy. I know some people have worked really hard to do that. And you were so good because I couldn't quite tell. Your faces were absolutely not giving it away, but I can imagine that added a layer of complexity.
And it was not an overdub. It was done
Right.
live in the recording.
Yeah, it's wonderful, really wonderful. Anything else you'd like to say about the next movement, which we'll listen to in a moment?
No, I think
Okay,
just go ahead.
All right, well, let's do it. Let's listen to it's called Dream Number 2, is that?
Yes.
Dream Number 2. Let's listen. Okay, well, I must say that is an incredibly affecting piece. That second movement has got a lot of intensity. Yeah, really, to all of you. Amazingly effective and creates an incredible atmosphere. And bravo to all of you for an amazing performance, really amazing performance. Is there anything else that you'd like to say, any of you, about this working on this piece? Oh, and also you did work on it at Avaloch, at least partially, didn't you? Yeah, yeah, you were able to. I'm trying to remember your sharing of that. Was the sculpture there? Or some version of the sculpture there at Avaloch? I don't remember.
It was not. We had actually worked on it a little, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I remember we worked on it a little in Washington, D.C. the week before. And then we sort of drove all the sculptures up, dropped them off in Philadelphia, drove up to New York. I think we had like lunch at Red Hook near Ayane and Paul's place. And then we drove up to Avaloch in one day. And then there was all this, because we had been working on it with the sculptures, there was all this, we had a lot of recorded material that I could look at, and I could ask all sorts of questions with the quartet and see things that were working or not working, and work on the different sounds that they were playing and get their input on those.
Well, it's exciting for us that you did work for that piece, and I'm going to give you a little advertisement here for this CD that you made. And well, thank you so much, Lembit. That was really wonderful to hear about your process in creating this, this really, really extraordinary piece. Anything else any of you would like to say about it? I'd love to hear it.
Well, seeing it again, it kind of reminded me like how much those sculptures kind of became part of our family. And I think like literally for Lembit and Karen, like it was like a third person in their relationship in their apartment for a while.
It does have a strangely human quality. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's, I don't know what it is, but there's a human quality about it. Yeah, what was that like, Karen, living with
I mean, they moved out last summer, so they're living in Philly right now.
Oh yeah, you met them.
I met them like one of the first times I read with you guys that I met the sculptures. They were still there.
It's like we dropped off our children at college, so Lembit drove them back to Philly where they currently reside.
Studying at Drexel now.
Oh, so they're not sitting in your house any longer, huh?
Not anymore.
You miss them?
We do, and I think we'll reunite with them soon.
We do love the extra space, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff it creates. Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing this piece with us and this wonderful performance, and the sculptures. It's fascinating to see and incredible to hear.
Thanks so much.
I think we'll move on now to Paul Wiancko's piece, Lift. And Paul, will you tell us something about this piece, please?
Sure. Thanks for having me with you guys. Lift it's the second string quartet of mine that was conceived largely at Avaloch. I think I arrived to Avaloch with part of the first movement kind of ready to go. But in total, it's about a 25-minute piece. So I used that time at Avaloch to get to know the Aizuri Quartet better and kind of to get in touch with myself a little bit better. And my goal in Lift was for the piece to be sort of like a conduit, I guess, for it to be as direct a conduit as possible between how I was feeling and some sort of an experience for the Aizuri Quartet and for their audiences. And the way I went about that was to try to kind of amp myself up emotionally every day and pour as much of my heart and soul into just very, very small segments of music and individual ideas, and then find a way to weave all of these things together. So I saw the piece as sort of almost like taking someone's vitals. Like if you look at the progression of the piece, you can kind of see how I was feeling every day, what ideas kind of happened at what time, more or less. So when I was finished writing the piece, I was completely exhausted. But the idea is that Lift is based in joy and the feelings associated with joy, including the feeling of loneliness and sorrow occasionally, to make that feeling of joy burn brighter. So that's sort of the breakdown of the piece, and being at Avaloch certainly made it easier to get in touch with all of these things, and provided that kind of emotional and physical space to get to know the Aizuri Quartet better too.
Yeah. So Emma, this was probably not the first piece you played with the Aizuris, but what was it like to learn this coming into it?
I mean, it was just so much fun to learn the piece. Paul, I love the piece. And Lembit, I love listening to the piece that we were listening to earlier. And I hope I get a chance to play it with the group someday if the sculptors come back and live in your apartment for a while. Lift was one of the first pieces that we learned together. We did learn it pretty early on into me joining the group. And it was just so much fun to get to know Paul's kind of compositional language through that piece. And like he said, it's all about these really visceral emotions. And I think it's easy to tap into that while you're playing the music. And it really, at least for me, kind of affected me as I was practicing it, rehearsing it, and playing it with the others. And also, it's such a privilege to learn this piece with the other 3 members of my quartet here, because they're experts on it in a way. You know, they had performed it a lot and recorded it, and you know, I had them to kind of guide me through the piece. And Paul too, you know, when we play it for Paul, he can be like, oh no, do that differently there, or that sounds great. So that was a really fun experience.
Yeah, must have been wonderful to come into that world with them. And the rest of you in the quartet, tell us about your experience with this piece as well.
One of my favorite memories with this piece was that it's in 2 parts, but we when we did the Osaka competition, we decided to bring it. There was an option in one of the rounds to bring a piece of your choice, and so it was paired with another a contemporary work by a Japanese composer named Akira Nishimura. And so we decided, rather than, you know, go for some of the more standard string quartet repertoire like Debussy or Haydn or Beethoven, that we wanted to really kind of put our stamp in this round. So we decided to go contemporary, and we brought Lift to the competition. And I think that was like a really exciting thing for the judges to see too, to be exposed to Paul's music in that moment, but also to understand that we're a quartet that really cherishes and values modern music.
Mm-hmm.
And we really want these pieces to be more prominent and more a part of quartet standard repertoire in the future. So that was one part. And then after we won the competition, we got to do a tour in Japan, and we played Lift and in like one of these really small towns in Japan. And it was just really amazing because we didn't know what the reaction was going to be, because nobody knew, like just seeing Paul Wiancko Lift, like what kind of piece it was going to be. But then at the very end, when we play the last note, it's not very common for Japanese audiences to just like erupt, but this audience just erupted. And I remember one man just like standing up and being like, "Arigato," which means thank you in Japanese. And it's just like really touching that like Paul's music would have that effect. In a small town in Japan. That was really cool.
That's a wonderful story. Paul, were you there by any chance?
I wish.
Yeah.
I'm half Japanese myself, and I have family outside of Tokyo, and I've performed there many times, and that is, I can verify that that is not a common response in Japan.
That's such a
So
beautiful.
that's amazing.
Yeah, really, really. Miho and Karen, anything else that you'd like to say before we listen to the first movement of this piece?
I think just the real joy in the writing, just on our instruments, the way this piece we can really physically embody is such a special part of it, such a fun aspect of it. Everything from, it's just such a wonderful exploration of what's possible, both individually and with a quartet, which you'll hear in these excerpts or in these videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it was, I think when we first started learning it, or like even workshopping it, some of the kinds of gestures and sounds, at least for me, was a very new exploration. Like it was, yeah, there were like techniques and sounds that I was not used to doing. And so I think that kind of new discovery was really neat. And yeah.
And this performance that we're going to watch took place, can you tell us where it took place?
So we were up in Troy, New York. We were playing the Friends of Chamber Music of Troy, and kind of as a satellite event to that, we played at this wonderful space called the Sanctuary for Independent Media. And it was kind of a fun, more informal performance, and we kind of talked, before each movement, we talked to the audience about kind of what like we're doing now, each piece, and I think that night we featured 2 pieces from our album, and Paul's was one of them.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, let's listen to the first movement. Does it have its own title, the movement itself, Paul?
No, it's just part 1 of Lift for String Quartet.
Okay, well, let's take a listen. Well, it's astounding energy and uplift and energy in that movement. It's really, really fills you with such positive feeling. I think if that's the way you were feeling at Avaloch then, Paul, that you must have been having a good time.
It was the cookies.
Of course, always the cookies.
Oh, the Avaloch cookies.
I don't think there's been a single one of these events that hasn't mentioned the cookies. Really, seriously. So now talk about the second movement, which is quite different. Can you tell us?
Yeah, the second movement, as you will hear shortly. I wonder actually if we should play the second movement straight into the third movement next, because the third movement, I think it's an abridged version of it actually, and it'll kind of make more sense as a coda to the second movement. Um, the first movement is very kind of boisterous, and maybe you could consider it kind of an introduction to my language. The second movement is kind of a internal deep dive, and it's very much one of the most personal things I think I've ever written. And the Aizuri Quartet just is right there with me every step of the way. When I hear them play, I hear what I heard in my mind while I wrote this piece, and that's something that just brings me joy every time I hear them play this piece. So thank you, guys.
Really.
And then the third movement is kind of quite the opposite. It's I guess I sort of refer to it as my personal ode to joy. It's just kind of giving it everything I got.
And what we're going to hear is just part of the third movement. Is that correct?
Right. This is the finale third of the third movement.
And what other parts are there to that movement, even though we won't be hearing it?
They're just two. It's almost the third movement of Lift is almost kind of a choose your adventure style last movement, where I just couldn't decide on how to end the piece. There are too many directions I wanted to explore, so I kind of shoved two more pieces into this piece. The first one is called Glacial. It's very kind of slow and tonal, and it's a very short movement. The second part of it is kind of this 60-second weird ragtime, kind of dark, fun dance called Maniacal Swing. But I think there may have been some restrictions on the timing of this performance. But hopefully and you can come see the Aizuri Quartet play the piece live. And yeah, so we'll hear part 3 of part 3.
Got it. After the second movement, we'll hear part 3 of part 3.
After the second movement.
Right.
Correct.
And Miho, I watched your whole video of this performance, and you had some really interesting things to say about how the second movement was put together. Would you mind sort of expanding on that a little bit in terms of each individual's part?
Sure, and I guess if anyone wants to jump in, please do, in case I get tongue-tied. So I feel like, yeah, each instrument kind of is doing its own thing, but it felt really like a weaving, like that something was being woven. And so kind of Emma starts us off laying down these chords, and I don't know, it feels like, to me, it feels like kind of like a blanket of like, I don't know, a very comfy something. And then
sorry to jump in. I've always thought of that part as like a big pendulum clock, like swinging from side to side. Yeah,
and you're like the constant, like I can count on your part.
Yeah.
And then I think, like, I forget what the words were, but I think each part was very descriptive. Like mine was like a rusty swing set. So it also had a different kind of pendulum feeling to it. And then Karen had kind of like rain, like the first signs of rain, or.
Right. It starts with some pizzicato. There are all kinds of pizzicato explored throughout, but at the opening of the second movement, the raindrops that feel a bit random, that sort of very organic, natural quality to them.
I must say it's kind of astonishing to see you guys play this piece and to a T follow these kind of emotional directives, where I realize as a player myself how challenging it is to be able to be in your own world while being 100% aware of what everyone is doing around you, and trying to fit into the fabric of the piece while giving the illusion that you're just kind of off in your own corner exploring this sound. And that's one thing that I sort of had some concerns with when writing this piece. Like, is it worth the effort that I know that's going to need to go into this to get across such a kind of simple, minimal musical point, you know? And you guys did it so beautifully. You can't even tell that it's a hard thing to execute, you know? It just sounds like the easiest thing in the world, and that's pretty rare. So I just want to let you know that I appreciate that.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Paul.
We take our job very seriously.
I know.
Look at that face. Yeah, it is amazing how there's this disjunct, but they're all there, and then they come together at various points in the movement, and you realize, oh yeah, they've been in their own sonic worlds, but then it all comes together. It's very, very effective movement. I love it. So let's listen to the second and third of the third movement. And I believe you said, Paul, that this third section of the third movement is the one that's actually called Lift. Is that correct?
It is the literal kind of musical lift in the piece. So it's L-I-F-T lowercase, as opposed to the title of the piece, which is L-I-F-T all uppercase. Not that it matters, but that's kind of the structural idea.
Got it. Okay, great. Well, let's listen to the second and part of the third movement of Paul Wiancko's Lift. extraordinary performance of a very, very beautiful and emotional piece. Bravo to everybody. You guys are amazing, I must say. Anything else you'd like to say about your experience with these pieces, or how are you all doing, by the way, in this crazy time? Are you able to do any work together? What's going on? No.
Our first day of rehearsal is tomorrow.
Wow.
Since like March.
You're gonna be together?
Yeah, we're gonna be together tomorrow at 2:30 p.m.
Oh boy, that's gonna feel good.
Yeah, so we're starting rehearsals. We're all very excited about it. It's been a while. I've been doing all right. I'll let everyone else speak for themselves. I think everyone is doing well considering the situation that the world is in. And yeah, we miss each other a lot. We miss playing together.
Oh, I'm so thrilled that you're actually going to be together and play together. Not everybody's getting to do that. Do you have a space where you can be far enough apart or anything, something like that? Or you're not going to even bother? Just going to be your own pod?
I think we'll have a combination of being masked and a pod and trying to keep as much distance as we can inside our apartments. Yeah.
It's really tough. And what'll you be working on?
Beethoven 127.
Oh, lucky you.
Something light to start us off.
Really, really. That's fantastic. Oh, I can't think of anything more uplifting than playing that. That slow movement is one of my desert island pieces. About it. Well, I want to thank you all for sharing this time with me and sharing your music and your performances and the depth to which you go with everything that you do. I know that from experience, hearing you play many times in many different ways. And I hope, really hope, that I'll get to hear you live with Emma sometime soon, which I think is very exciting. And perhaps at Avaloch, who knows? We'll see where the world takes us. But thank you so much for joining us and being part of this Made at Avaloch presentation. It's been wonderful to connect with the Avaloch community through these events, and so glad that you could be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you for always nurturing artists as you do, even during these really difficult times. Thanks for the space. Yeah.
Absolutely. So happy to do it. Well, take care and be well, everybody. And thanks again.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
Thank you.